our hearts go out to the Melton family, and we also like to send those same thoughts out to the entire Kansas City, Kansas law enforcement community and to all law enforcement here in the metro area and across the United States. With that said, I'd like to announce the charges that we filed a little bit earlier today in this situation. 2 individuals have been charged, Jamaal Lewis and Daqan Sipple. We'll start with Mr. Sipple first. Mr. Sipple was charged with an account of aggravated assault, an account of criminal discharge of a weapon at an unoccupied dwelling. Those charges arise from an incident that had happened a little bit earlier in the afternoon in an area we call Juniper Gardens at approximately 2nd and Edgerton here in Kansas City, Kansas. It was that incident that people, citizens had called in and had started the chain of events that eventually led to Captain Melton's death. The second defendant, Jamaal Lewis, is charged with those same counts as an aider and abetter. It's the state's theory. We believe that Mr. Sipple is the one that fired shots at 2nd and Edgerton in Juniper Gardens, approximately 7 or 8 shots fired there, and that Jamaal Lewis was the driver of the car. As you may know from now, that those individuals fled from there with a 3rd individual in the car, and in the area of approximately 15th and Roland Avenue, then the individuals fled from the car, and Officer Eric Jones then had contact and took into custody Daqan Sipple. We've charged Mr. Sipple then with an additional count of aggravated assault of a law enforcement officer on Officer Eric Jones. Jamaal Lewis fled from that area, and in the approximate area just west of there, at about 22nd and Georgia, was then spotted by officers, including Captain Melton. And Captain Melton gave pursuit, and in the course of that, Mr. Lewis fired shots directly at Captain Melton, resulting in Captain Melton's death. As a result of that, we've charged Mr. Lewis with a single count of capital murder. As you know, capital murder carries one of 2 penalties, either death or life without parole. At this time, we're not making a decision as to whether we will officially seek death. That decision does not need to be made until the arraignment, and the arraignment will be sometime down in the future, and a discussion. First of all, I've got police actually doing some more investigation on that aspect of it. Once that's all gathered, I will sit down with the families, and we'll hold a discussion of what that means to seek death and how it occurs, and we'll get input from them as to whether we should seek death or not. So no decisions being made now, and it'll be in the future before that decision is made. I should add that Mr. Lewis, with the capital murder charge, has a bond of $10 million. Daqan Sipple has a bond with his 3 counts for $100,000. At this point in time, while there's a person of interest that police are still looking to speak with, I can't say that we're anticipating additional charges at this time based upon what we know happened at each of those locations. I don't think I have anything further to add in the way of prepared comments to that, so I'll take questions.
Can you tell us, I thought you said in the beginning, or the police were telling us, that there were 3 or 4 suspects over at Juniper Gardens, and then 3 were in the car at 15th and Roland, was it? And that the driver was arrested there. Is that not correct? now? It was not the driver who was arrested?
It was not the driver that was arrested there, that's correct.
That's where Sipple was arrested.
That's where Sipple was arrested. We believe Jamaal Lewis to be the driver.
And then he ran alone.
He ran alone, yes.
So there were only these two
No.
people.
No, there were 3 in the car when the shooting occurred in Juniper Gardens. However, we believe that the third person took no active role. At least that's what our evidence is showing right now. That he did not fire any shots, did not have a weapon, and was not driving the car. So at this point, given the evidence that we've been able to determine so far, we don't have any reason to believe now that he took an active role or even a passive role, that he was either an active participant or an aider and abetter in any of those crimes.
So no charges then against that third
At this
person.
point, we're no charges, but police are looking to talk to him still.
You still haven't found him?
They have not talked with him.
Do they know who he is?
I believe so, yes, ma'am.
Was the firearm used in the drive-by shooting at the apartment complex, the firearm used to kill Captain Melton, same firearm, different firearms?
Different firearm. We know that some of the shell casings that were found at Juniper Gardens were 9mm shell casings. Those are different caliber than the shell casings that were found at the scene where Captain Melton was shot.
Do the public portion of your charges indicate what kind of weapon was used in each crime?
Well, as to the brand, I don't have that information with me, but handguns, 9mm at Juniper Gardens, and a .40 caliber at the scene where Captain Melton was shot.
And also, you had indicated that there was an aggravated assault on an LEO against Daqan Sipple for an assault on Officer Eric Jones. Can you describe the nature of that assault? Was that a firearms assault? What was the nature of that assault?
Well, as Officer Eric Jones attempted to take him into custody, we believe that he had a weapon on him still, and that weapon we believe is the one used at Juniper Gardens. And as a result of his actions there, that Officer Jones felt threatened and in fear of his life.
He displayed the firearm?
All I said was he felt in fear of his life as a result of the actions.
Okay, and it was due to the fact that he was in possession of a firearm. There was not
He-
a scuffle of any
He
kind.
did have a firearm on his person, yes.
Was there a scuffle of any kind in terms of his resisting arrest beyond his attempted to flee? That was
I don't-
indicated in the charges. I realize you
Yeah,
can't discuss.
I don't know that I'm prepared to say that. I'm a little concerned with scuffle as to when a
sorry.
scuffle begins and when a scuffle ends. So at this point, I'm just going to say that he was taken into custody.
Jerry, can you explain, I know sometimes in the commission of a felony, and then there's another crime such as a murder, everybody involved, even though they weren't the person that pulled the trigger, is charged with that murder.
Yeah.
Can you explain why Sipple was not charged with capital murder?
Sure. And what you're referring to is felony murder, and all the participants of the felony can be charged in a felony murder. In this situation, Sipple was taken into custody 19 minutes before Captain Melton was shot. In order for Sipple to be liable for the death or the actions of Lewis, we would have to prove that he knew what Lewis was going to do over there on 22nd Street. And we don't have any evidence to show that he knew Lewis was going to shoot a police officer, or particularly Captain Melton there.
Thank you.
Do you know who they were shooting at Juniper Gardens?
That part of the investigation is still ongoing. We've been able to learn that there's been some kind of ongoing problem between Lewis and Sipple and another group of people, and the police are still trying to run all that down.
Does it
Were
have-
Lewis and Sipple involved in drugs or gangs that you're aware of?
I don't know of any involvement of drugs and gangs in this particular case.
Do you know if it has anything to do with Sipple's brother being murdered?
I don't have any information as to that.
Can you tell us, just give us a little background on Sipple and Lewis? Do they have a criminal history? What's their background?
On Lewis, I've not been able to find any kind of a criminal history. On Sipple, he does have a very minor criminal history. I believe it's all juvenile. There's a theft charge, I know, battery of a school employee, and a disorderly conduct. There might be one fourth one that's, again, a misdemeanor too.
Jerry,
Can
is
you tell
there
us
any,
about the likelihood that somebody like the Jamaal Lewis, who has no criminal history to speak of, would all of a sudden jump into, a capital murder charge for killing a police officer?
Well, I mean, I guess by your question, you presume that you have to been convicted before you jump into that. There's a lot of people who do bad things that have not been caught and convicted. I'm not alleging that Jamaal Lewis has done bad things in the past in that, but
But is it odd that somebody who has no criminal record would kill a police officer? Is it more usual that somebody who has kind of gotten into some trouble and it's accelerated?
I don't know if I've seen any statistics on that, but I guess I'd just say is that somebody who doesn't want to be caught by the police and arrested is likely to do that, and I think that's what happened here.
Jerry, is there any history at Juniper Gardens, not with regard to these two guys, but gang activity generally there that's been a problem?
I don't know specifically that I could say with gang activity, but there's been problems in the past down in Juniper Gardens, over time.
Can you tell us about the arrest of Jamaal Lewis at the scene of Captain Melton's shooting?
Well, we believe Mr. Lewis ran from the scene in an eastbound area through woods, and there were a number of officers saturating the area, and he came through the woods and up to an area of about 19th and Stewart, which is just south of there, and there were several officers there in the area who saw him coming out of the woods and took him into custody without any kind of incident.
Did he have the gun on him when he was arrested, or had he ditched that somewhere when he...
Those are two questions, but so he did not have the gun on him.
Did you recover that weapon?
The weapon, we believe, has been recovered, although tests still need to be done on it.
Were the weapons we're talking about two different weapons, but were those firearms obtained legally or illegally?
Well, I don't know anything about the 9mm yet. I haven't heard anything on that. But the .40 caliber that Lewis had, I know was purchased recently, and by recently I guess I mean May of 2016. And I haven't heard anything yet. I guess best thing to say is that investigation is still going on, and it's being conducted by ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, in conjunction with several detectives from the police department that are assigned to that unit.
And because you know the date it was purchased, I would assume that means that it was purchased through some legal means, but the question would be whether the person purchasing it was the individual using it.
Well, it was purchased at a store. It wasn't stolen, if that's what you're getting at.
Right, okay.
Correct.
What store was it purchased at?
I don't have that information in front of me.
Will you be able to obtain that information and release that information at a later time?
Yes and no. I will, but I probably have that information available to me real soon, but I'm not sure we'll release it yet.
Jerry, do you have any idea how long it will take before the decision is made on whether to seek the death penalty?
Well, I spoke with all the members, various members of the family today, and what I told them is we still had more investigation to do, number one. Number two, I wanted to give them their space to grieve, and that it wouldn't be proper to talk about it while they're still going through that grieving process. I said we'll give them time, and I anticipate we're not going to make that decision. It's going to be a number of months before a preliminary hearing is set, and so it'll be months before we sit down and make that decision.
Jerry, you're also working on Brad Lancaster's
Yes, ma'am.
murder. Can you tell us about the burden and the cost of doing potentially 2 death penalty cases for the prosecutor's office at one time?
Well, the burden, certainly in a case like this, generally on a lot of murder cases, we have one prosecutor assigned, maybe one experienced or mid-level at least prosecutor assigned, and then maybe a very young prosecutor who's learning. In this case, I have myself and 2 other experienced prosecutors assigned to Lancaster, and I assume that's what I'm going to do in this case too. So the burden, it does take up time. and time's of value to us. It does have a cost, but it's not like we're going to be, I mean, my attorneys are going to make the same salary whether they work on these cases or not. It's just going to take up time that we could be doing other things.
Do public defenders get paid the same for a capital murder case?
Yeah,
as they do?
I don't know. I assume they make salary, but you know, it's not just the typical public defender. In Wyandotte County, we use an appointment system where attorneys volunteer to be on it. The people who represent defendants in capital cases don't come from that list. Topeka maintains a list called the Appellate Defender's Office. They have some full-time employees, and then they contract out with qualified attorneys. And there's not that many qualified attorneys in the state, because to be qualified, they have to have tried a number of trials that are of a certain level and a certain type of crime, and then they have to go to some training schools too. So there aren't that many people that are eligible for that. And those attorneys that don't work directly for the Appellate Defender's Office, or the Capital Defender's Office, I should say, then when they're contracted out, they are paid some sort of an hourly rate or a contract rate at least, and that would be over and above their the Capital Defender's typical expenses.
So the difference between just a regular murder case and a capital murder case, death penalty case, the cost is not that much different, is that what you're saying?
For my office, it's not that much different, unless there are experts that we're going to have to bring in for various aspects of the case, and we'll just have to wait and see. That's where my costs would be greater.
Jerry, are you saying that the same 3 prosecutors working on Ayers' case will be working on the Lewis case?
No, not at all. I have myself and 2 others working on Ayers' case. It'll be myself and 2 different attorneys that'll be working on this case.
And that's got to be a lot of pressure. You know, the community really wants some prosecution, fair and righteous justice in this case. That's got to be a burden too, because these were also friends of yours, just like in the police department.
Yeah, you know, Captain Melton, I've known him for a long time. He was in the sheriff's office prior to him coming on the police department, and I knew him there. And Detective Lancaster was in the office several times a week bringing cases over. So, yeah, a lot of my attorneys have known them, and obviously not in the same way or same relationship as the police department, but we felt a closeness with them, and it does create some feelings and some sort of a burden.
The third person, this person of interest that you had mentioned a little bit earlier, you've identified him, and you feel like it's going to be very long before you can get him in for questioning?
Well, all I can tell you is that I have not identified him. The police department is actively trying to locate and get him in for questioning.
Is he considered a danger to the public while he's at large?
Well, at this point in time, we don't have any reason to believe that he actively committed any crimes in this, so I would be, I think, going outside of what I know to say that he's a danger to the public.
Can we be
Certainly hangs around with people that are a danger to the public.
Are you looking for tips on who this person
Well,
is?
I think that would, well, I think the police know who he is. We would be looking on tips as to where he might be, but at this point, I don't have his name in front of me to share that information.
Were the 2 defendants from Kansas City, Kansas, and where did they go to high school?
They both have Kansas City, Kansas addresses, but I don't believe that each of them always stayed in Kansas City, Kansas. As to the high school, I don't have any information if they even went to high school or where they may have gone. Anything else? All right, if not, thank you.
Thank you.